Hello, everybody. I'm not quite sure how these sessions run, so I'm going to make a few remarks at the beginning, and hopefully we're mainly going to have a discussion about what's been going on. But I've been following the US election into the wee hours last night and all day today on CNN, which is provided by far the best coverage, by the way. If you can get hold of CNN, it's well worth watching. So bottom line first, who's going to win? It looks pretty certain now that Biden's going to snatch it by roughly a similar margin to Trump's win in 2016, which is quite ironic because Trump is now jumping up and down about marginal states only being won by 20,000 votes, which he won several of by about 20,000 votes in 2016. As you've probably guessed or seen in some of the headlines, there's certainly going to be a number of court cases, although there's very little evidence of any real problem with any of the ballots. And at state level, where in the US, it's the states themselves that determine how the ballots are run within their individual states, and even the states run by Republicans have not signaled that there's been any particular problem with the ballot. So I think it's going to be very difficult for him to challenge legally the outcome and the result. I'll just say one other thing on the legal situation, and I don't pretend for a moment to be an expert on the US constitutional laws and precedents, but one of the interesting things about Trump appointing extra people to the Supreme Court to bias it in a conservative direction, which people probably haven't picked up on, is that one of the dominant views of the conservatives on the Supreme Court is what's called the states' rights perspective, which is that they are very wary of the US federal Supreme Courts interfering in decisions by states level governments and Supreme Courts. So Trump's going to be on a particularly hard sell to try and convince the federal Supreme Court to intervene and overturn decisions by state level Supreme Courts about any of the ballots that are taking place, particularly as they're based on individual state legislation, not on federal legislation. Ironically, he's probably made it more difficult on this particular issue for him to win anything on the Supreme Court. So leaving that aside for the moment anyway, I think let's just assume for the moment that Biden is going to win. And it looks like the Democrats are not going to get control of the Senate. It's going to be very close, but there's probably going to be a couple of seats in it. But the Republicans are likely to retain control of the Senate. And the Democrats also lost a few seats in the House, and although they're still going to have a majority, it's not going to be quite as strong as it was before. And at state level, the Democrats haven't won, I don't think, any of the state legislatures that they were hoping to take over. And that's particularly important in terms of American domestic politics, which a lot of people don't really understand, and particularly the relationship between the presidency and the other levels of government in the United States. Just to give you some idea, one of my American public administration colleagues did a calculation. He reckons that there are 93,000 governments in the United States, if you include all of the federal, state level, city, town, local sheriff's departments and all the rest of them. It's an incredibly decentralized system. And actually the president, ironically, probably has far less power over domestic issues in the United States than the UK Prime Minister does here over domestic policies. So assuming Biden wins, it's going to be, obviously he can do things at the federal government level and particularly in the executive branch of government, and he can repair some of the damage that's been done by the Trump administration, which has systematically underfunded some aspects of federal government, put in place, sorry, my light fell over. He's put in place, in charge of some of the federal agencies, people who are either completely inappropriate or have completely the wrong skill set, or are simply ideological appointees. And in some ways worse, in a lot of federal departments and agencies, he's not appointed anybody to some of the most senior positions. As a result, they've been more or less paralysed in terms of policy making, because career bureaucrats, civil servants, have been very reluctant to do anything without say-so from the administration. So the federal administration has been greatly weakened by what's been going on, and more recently he's been trying to make that even worse by doing things like politicising more senior civil service posts. He's put out an executive order last week which would have politicised a lot more senior roles and allowed him to dismiss a lot of career civil servants without reason. So assuming Biden takes over, he's going to have quite a mammoth repair and reorientation job with the federal government, and then he's also got to negotiate relationships with the 50 state governments, a lot of whom are Republicans, and it's going to take a long time to change many of the internal domestic policies. So my view would be that the biggest immediate impact of a Biden presidency won't be inside the United States, it'll be internationally. Whether we like it or not, the US is the symbol of, the preeminent symbol of liberal democracies around the globe. Trump's relationship with autocrats in China and Russia, Hungary, Turkey, and so on, has been giving a green light to a lot of the so-called illiberal democracies and autocracies that we've got. And his hostility towards the US's traditional democratic allies have massively weakened US soft power around the world. And I think the first thing, the most symbolic thing that's going to change will be Biden trying to rebuild some of those relationships, bringing the US back into some of the institutions of the international order, like the WHO, like the World Trade Organization properly, like bringing it back into the Paris Climate Accords and so on. And I think that both symbolically and practically is going to have far more impact, far more quickly globally and for us than anything else. There is another issue which I won't go into now, but we can discuss if people want to, which is about the UK, EU and US trade negotiations. I saw a hilarious tweet today from Laura Kuenssberg saying that a source close to the British side of the EU-UK negotiations was saying that Biden being elected really wouldn't make any difference unless the EU were foolish enough to think that it changed things in relationship between the UK and the EU. Frankly, that's just pure denial. It's clearly going to have a massive impact. And the chances that a Biden administration will want to go for negotiations directly with the EU, which will sideline the UK, I think are fairly strong. But we can talk about that a bit later. So that's, for me, that's the big picture, which is that a new Biden administration will have quite a dramatic impact internationally very quickly. It'll have less of an impact inside the US immediately. It'll be quite a long haul to change some of the things that's happened in the last 4 years of the Trump administration. I think I'll stop there for now, Mary, and because I'd really rather dwell on the topics that people are particularly interested in asking questions about.